Welcome to the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. Here's your host, Brien Hanley.
Hey, everybody, what's going on? This is your man, Big B, Brien Hanley, along with Tim Fitzgerald. Welcome to Big 12 Insiders. I appreciate everybody being in here. Got a good show for you guys today, man. We're talking about the transfer portal. Not whether basically what's going on with the transfer portal. It is hot and heavy right now. Guys jumping in this thing left and right. Whether you agree or disagree, it is what it is. It's here. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the teams that are using it as far as college football playoffs. Some of those teams that are using it and used it to their advantage fits to get better. And here they are in the college football playoffs. So the transfer portal is a part of college football now. Whether people like it or not, you got to stop talking about that. Kind of yesterday, we can complain and complain and complain. Well, come up with some solutions. A few teams came up with some solutions, and they're still playing meaningful football here. So we'll talk about that and more. So we'll just kind of dive into this. Again, before we do any of that, remember, like, follow, subscribe, continue to leave those comments. Y'all did a great job yesterday in the comments about what you wanted to talk about. So this is one of those topics. So we're going to keep bringing those things as we go through football and continue to talk about football. Like we mentioned, man, basketball, we can't talk about it yet, Fitz. I want to, but this is still football season. It just is.
There's too much football news going on. And
yeah,
we live in a football world.
do.
It's not just us talking. It's pretty clear from the interaction numbers, the engagement, the TV ratings that college football rules the day when it comes to college athletics. And we're going to stick in that slot for now, but we'll get to basketball. There's no doubt about it.
Absolutely. So first things first, the transfer portal right now, Fitz, is hot. You know, we were just talking off air and you were like, well, you know, if you cite any numbers, and I'm like, I'm not going to talk any numbers, because if I say a number of people that are in the transfer portal, literally 45 minutes later, that number is going to be totally different, because people just continuously, every single hour, it seems like, are jumping into this thing. Now, I haven't seen any starters from any teams that are currently playing that are jumping in the transfer portal. I haven't seen anything. Now, we have seen some guys from teams that are in the college football playoff. We've seen some of that, but I haven't seen any starters. I don't think we will, because that's crazy talk. Now, the one thing I think we will, anybody that loses the first weekend, we're going to see some guys jump in there, and those may be starters. After the first weekend, I think it's going to crank up even more. But as of right now, I guess my first question for you, Fitz, is transfer portal, the time of year that it is. I know we've talked about this before. It makes it difficult, but I'm not sure there's another way that you can get around it.
No, it probably is the best time. It's unfortunate, but you also don't want to voluntarily carry around dead weight.
Correct.
Guys that don't want to be there. Now, you're going to get into the other side of that here in a little bit, but let me just point out that there's a new force at work here with the transfer portal. It's the 105-man scholarship limit, or the roster limit, that a lot of these portal entries, because you noted they're not starters. They're
right.
Guys that are being cut, essentially. That's what college football's become now. We've got this roster limit that's hard and fast. You're not going to be on it. Whether you've been a starter or are just a guy that never sees the field, you got to go. So that's added to the chaos of this. And I think we'll see some sorting out here once that calms down, that version of it. And then more people realize, okay, I'm still part of this team. Do I want to go into the portal, look at the number of people in the portal? I don't know that that's ever slowed down a single college athlete thinking that there's other guys in the portal that might be better than them, because that's never been proven that there's a better college athlete in the portal than me, as the college athlete. That's kind of the problem, what gets you into the portal sometimes.
Correct. Here's my thing. We've got two different perspectives on the transfer portal from coaches within our conference, and I want to bring up both of those, see what you and guys in the comments what you guys have to think. First one is Coach Prime. He basically just came out and said, now it was strategic on how he said it, Fitz, because Colorado doesn't have the biggest NIL. Now, I think they can get more because the more successful Deion is, who he is, there's going to be people from outside influence that give money to that program. But as we talked about yesterday, but they don't have the biggest NIL of anybody. And he basically came out and said, look, transfer portal, I want people that have dreams versus looking for the bag. Now, is that really realistic? Guys are wanting to get paid as much as they can, but his thinking is, and it's smart. It's like, look, you can come here and we can get you the best coaching, whether you agree with that or not. That's a different conversation. But we can get you the best coaching. We can get you seen because, let's face it, nobody has more eyeballs on them in the Big 12 Conference than Colorado. That's just a fact. So we get you seen by people, so you get the notoriety. And if you're good enough, you're going to go to the NFL. But when you may not pay you the best, but you're going to play top competition, you're going to compete at a high level, and we're going to get you ready if you are ready and capable of going to the next level. I like that aspect of it, Fitz.
Me too.
There's Kenny Dillingham. Kenny Dillingham just said, look, you jump in the portal, we'll help you find a school since they're still playing. Now, he probably won't feel this way every year, Fitz, if they're not in the college football playoff. But for this year, he says, hey, if you're wanting to get in the portal, fine. We'll help you find another school, but we're not going to kick you off the team. You don't have to leave if you want to stay around because we're still playing football, and just continue to show up, be on time, do what you're supposed to do. We're not going to tell you that you have to leave, but we'll help you get to another school. Now, maybe that was media talk, but I don't think Kenny Dillingham does a whole lot of media talk. I think he just kind of, hey, this is what it is. I'm telling you what I'm thinking. It's gotten him into trouble a few times, but I think he's being sincere. I like both avenues. I know you don't necessarily agree with both avenues. Tell us why.
Well, the first part being Dillingham for me, I don't really disagree with it. I just want to see if it works. I guess I'm too old school. If you're not invested on the team 100%, I don't want you in the locker room because I feel like that can cause some erosion. But I also feel like if you go in knowing, hey, coach knows I'm going in the portal, but you're going to be cognizant of what you're doing and what you're saying. I would hope. Right. I'm going to keep an eye on that one. I'm going to not pass my full judgment, but boy, I feel like you're playing with dynamite. If you got players in the portal still in your locker room. Colorado, I needed to explain to me why Colorado doesn't have a very good NIL.
Yeah.
There's money out there. There's no doubt about it. The cost of living in Boulder's got to be higher than anywhere else in the Big 12 by far. And maybe Provo, I don't know. I didn't check the real estate prices. I might next time I'm there just because, I loved it. I think it's a very fascinating topic of how he approaches it. I actually agree with that one and that, hey, look, if this is just about, because I think he's seeing the other side of the problem too. When the money gets so big, that becomes the issue.
Correct.
So kind of keeping everyone on a level playing field. He's going to put two guys in the top 5-ish in the Heisman race. Mm-hmm. So I think that speaks highly of what he's doing. I'm just like Dillingham. I'm watching the ongoing process of Deion, Coach Prime, working the portal and how he's doing it, and I'm absolutely fascinated by it because we're seeing now other programs, which we'll get into, having success doing it, and other programs finding out that there's a degree of chance to this, where you hit the right combination of flavors or you don't. You either get up with delicious soup or crap, and it's going both ways. But even last year, when Colorado realized we brought in a lot of guys, this mixture didn't work, then they could weed out some ingredients and add new ingredients, and boom, I think it clicked. Now it won't be as easy because they're losing incredible players this year, but I think it's put them on a path now where they can be much more selective in the portal and get guys that are really coming to Colorado just for exactly the things he outlines there, lays out in front of everyone to see. And I'm interested, Big B. I just want to see how this ends up.
Yeah, I'm I'm real interested in it. I think Colorado, and obviously this is talk for later, but I think next year will be a huge year for that program moving forward, because with what they're bringing in, which we don't even know everything they bring in from the portal. We know they got some high-level guys coming from high school. If they have some more success, Colorado could be on that trajectory that a lot of people didn't think that they were going to be on. But then there was a flip side. A lot of people did think they were going to be on. So next year will be key for them. But let's look at as far as the coaching aspect of this. Coaches probably got to hate the timing. And the reason that they hate the timing is because of the national signing date, getting ready for bowl games. They got to recruit their own guys, go get other guys, sign high school guys, get ready for a bowl game if you qualify. There's just a ton of going on in a short amount of time, basically the month of December. You just got a ton going on. I think the one thing that gets people maybe not realize, that kind of gets swept under the rug, is the recruiting of their own players. I think that's the part that people kind of overlook per se, Fitz, is that, yeah, we're going in the portal, we're going to go get guys, but you know what? You don't want to lose 20 guys to the transfer portal. Now, maybe if you're Colorado and when you were dealing with year one and you had a bunch of guys that didn't qualify to play, Power 4 football, that's a different conversation. But for the most part, in these Big 12 schools, they're not wanting to lose 20 guys unless they know they can get 20 guys that are better than them, which there's no guarantee of that. So a lot of Big 12 schools are developmental programs. So they're not wanting to lose 20, 25 guys to the portal, And so recruiting your own guys, has it become, Fitz, where you almost have to have a person on staff that you hire that deals with portal, not only going and getting guys, but also retaining and keeping their current guys? Is that almost a necessity now?
Absolutely. You've got to see, have someone just keeping a pulse of the locker room and who's where and what's going on. And I just think so many players now think the portal is a solution.
Right.
When in reality, it can be a big problem. It's a solution for some that find the right place, and it does work, but we're seeing a lot of kids fall through the cracks.
Yeah.
And I think another reason we might be seeing this calming factor in the 105 is that you felt like you were forgotten on the roster, and you felt like you're not being given a chance, and then you see other players cut to get to 105, and you're not among them. Well, there's some value and worth to that as an individual, so that might get reflected. But yeah, I think players, they're just kids and they're acting emotionally, and I'm just interested to see how the coaches manage all this, because we know coaches now say when recruiting's done for the new freshman, you got to keep recruiting your own roster.
Yeah.
You never have to stop recruiting your roster because outside forces are always at them. Most notably, parents calling around, shopping their player to other schools, or these agents that have no affiliation and are really independent contractors and go grab a player and say, I can get you this in the portal. There may be no evidence of it. They might be a con artist, but families are falling for that. And then they get in the portal and discover, oh, that didn't work out so well. It's just an relegated or regulated wild frontier that the NCAA has let pass, and they need to put some more guardrails up. But we've been saying this since the start, and they've been ignoring that since the start.
Right. Now let's flip this to kind of the downside of the transfer portal. As my voice goes deep, the downside of the portal. Look, there's a lot of people out there, Fitz, that say transfer portal is ruining college football. And I laugh at those people because I'm like, first of all, the stadiums are still full. People still watch at record numbers. Tell me how it's ruining it. Well, they talk about the loyalty factor. Nobody's loyal. The kids aren't loyal. They don't learn commitment. And I always counter that with, well, coaches have never been loyal. Coaches can come and go whenever they want to, and nobody bats an eye. Nobody says, oh, he should have stayed. He should have honored his contract. And we've seen coaches go from one job to the next job and the next job in a matter of 4 years. They're at 3 different schools and nobody says anything. It's just, oh, well, it was a better opportunity. Well, why can't kids have a better opportunity? That always baffles me on why people say stuff like that. To me, it's jealousy. That they're jealous that these kids had options that maybe they didn't have at that age, but it is what it is. I don't want to get into that. But the downside of it to me, and what I believe is the real downside, not some kid giving kids options, is that the kids get in there and they get stuck. Is that there's so many guys that come from Power 4 schools thinking, okay, well, I'm going to go to another option, and then they get stuck. And that maybe their option should have been dropping down a tier. Maybe it should have been, hey, I'm at Iowa State. You know what? Maybe I should go to Utah State. Maybe I should go to a Fresno State. Now, again, I'm not bashing those schools, but they're not Power 4 schools. The competition isn't the same. So maybe you should go there. I just mentioned earlier about Colorado. Colorado, I don't care what anybody says. Don't get me wrong. They had bad coaching for the better part of 2 decades, but they had a lot of guys on their football team, Fitz, and I think you would agree, they weren't qualified to be playing Power 4 football. That's not bashing anybody. That's just the truth. You got a bunch of kids on your team that they're not Power 4 quality. Well, I think you still see that. Even if the guy's a 4-star, because recruiting services can't measure heart. They can't measure any of that kind of stuff and want to. They see some talent, but you know what? You get around other talented people, a lot of those guys crumble. They're just like, hey, I've never competed against guys that were as talented as me. And once I have to, I can't handle it, yada, yada, yada. It is what it is. That to me is the downside of this because, and again, I don't want to get into numbers because I don't really, I know them, but like I said, things change within the minute with transfer portal. But there were over 1,500 kids last year, Fitz, that got left in the portal that got out and didn't go anywhere. 1,500. Yep. That is a ton. And I'm like, what were you thinking? What were you doing? And I get this. The one thing that I do agree with fans on is people stop valuing the college education. That you got to value the college education because I think that's got to be first. Whether you plan on doing anything with it or not, you got to start valuing that more. And if the NCAA starts putting in ground rules that you got to have a certain grade point average to transfer, I think a lot of it stops. I think a lot of it stops. That could be an easy thing that they could do. Just like you have to have an entrance exam to get in, you got to have this certain grade point average to transfer. Period. End of story. But that's where I see the downside, Fitz, is kids getting in and then they can't get out. And then their college careers a lot of times are over.
I think what we're seeing here is we need an overall renovation of how we're going about business. I can see NILs now start saying, well, you've been given this money and it was not for some games. It was for the entire season, including the bowl game. And I think they're going to put that in the wording in the future that you got to play through it or you don't get all of it or nearly all of it. And everyone's got to protect themselves. You start doing that, we're going to see some cut down. I'm not sure you can put in a grade point average transfer rule and the courts won't shoot it down. But I do think as part of it can't be an employment agreement because they're not employees, but some type of agreement that you have to do this to do that. I'm not sure. I do think it needs revision, but again, the NCAA is not going to do anything that gets them into the courts because they spent way too much money defending things that they should have known they couldn't defend.
Right.
And found a better solution. So I think we're only part way into this. It's going to be tamed to a degree, but I think the only way you tame it, Big B, is once we get into the revenue sharing portion of this, there will have to be some obligations that go with that because while you're not an employee, and I know that schools resist that because of all the other things that go with being an employee. A lot of people don't think about it. It's not just your salary. There's a lot of expenses to hiring someone as a full-time employee, which these technically would be. So, but if you're not an employee, I don't know how many restrictions you can put on them for getting this money. But I think it's got to come into place. There has to be some tit for tat here. If you're going to get this amount of money per month guaranteed, well, we got to make sure we got guarantees coming back to us.
Yeah, those kind of provisions have to start getting put in place because if you don't, then I mean, you're going to start seeing even more. There were so many this year. It blew my mind of guys that played half the season and that just said, "Hey, this isn't going the way that I want it to go. I'm going to redshirt." And who knows how much NIL money that they had already received, and then they just said, sorry, I'm redshirting. I'm going somewhere else," and they've already taken the money. First of all, if I'm NIL, I'm like, look, you get it in installments, and this is a game by game basis. I don't know why you can't just do that. I know it's not supposed to be pay for play. But based on this is a week to week thing,
right?
I'm not telling you have to play great to get the money. I'm just saying we're going to give it to you based on each week. And if you're in the football game and you're playing, or even if you're hurt, fine. But for you to just opt out after 4 games and say, I'm transferring, well, you're not going to get another penny from us. And I think that's at some point that's got to be some common sense stuff. We got to start looking into that. But for overall, I think the transfer portal is great. Now let's turn our attention, Fitz, to what the transfer portal has done for teams that are in the college football playoff. And we'll just start with the Big 12. We got a team in the college football playoff, got a bye, deservingly so, in my opinion. Should have been 3 over Boise State, but that's a conversation we'll have down the road. Arizona State has used the transfer portal to their advantage. We've talked about it several times, but I think it's important to keep bringing up. Bad administration, bad coaching, bad players. They get a new administration, new coach, new players. They use the transfer portal to their advantage. They go from a 3-9 football team to an 11-2 football team, winning the Big 12 conference and in the college football playoff. They use the transfer portal to their advantage. Tell me where the downside is for what Arizona State did.
Well, they got it right.
I'm just trying to figure, because people will bash it. How is this a bad thing for Arizona State?
It's turned taking over a struggling program into an entirely different gig.
Correct.
Because the work to dig out a bad program has been getting easier as we go, but this makes it much easier.
Mm-hmm.
Indiana, we'll get to that in a second. But even if you're not going wholesale into the portal, you can go selectively solve a problem. I need a running back. Oh, there's Cam Scattaboo. I'm going to grab him. Nobody wants him. So really it becomes about being wise with your portal pickups. Mm-hmm. Are you really, who do you want to focus on? The guys that are coming down the ladder that want a better opportunity, or were washed out of their program for reasons, you don't want on your team? Or do you get someone that's hungry and coming up, but may not be as physically gifted? And so the selection process now becomes the entire story. And this is why I think we're going to see more coaches bringing roster members with them from their previous jobs, because they're a known commodity. They know exactly what they're getting, and that's comforting. But if you hit that portal solution right, if you find the right mix between the guys you have and the guys you need, and you find them not just as players, but as members of your locker room, and it clicks, it can be an absolutely incredible. In the past, there was no way you could take a program over that had been struggling this long, clearly in a talent deficient state of the program, mm-hmm. and turn it around this quickly before the portal. And now it's all possible. And that is so good for college football.
Absolutely. I just couldn't have said it better, Fitz. And the one thing about it is, people believe that the transfer portal is only good for teams middle tier, maybe lower tier. That isn't the case. That don't recruit at the highest level. Well, that's not true at all. Let's just talk the number 1 team in the country, Oregon. They have a slew of transfers, including their quarterback was a transfer. And Oregon recruits at the highest levels. And yet they said, you know what? We've got some needs. We're going to go out there and we're going to go get it. And they hit. Now, the one thing is, and I've mentioned this before, you got to hit on your quarterback. If you go to the transfer portal and you bring a quarterback in and it goes south and it doesn't go great, then your team is going to stink. And there is just ultra layers of proof to show you can't miss on the quarterback. You just can't. But Oregon would be another one team. Ohio State, again, another team that recruits at the highest level, has the highest level, or is at the highest level as far as a football budget. Highest level of NIL. The reports are they spent $20 million on NIL, bringing in transfers. It worked. I mean, they're not at the low end of this. Now, Texas, on the other hand, I don't know how much Texas has brought in a few, but Texas is one of those that doesn't lean on the transfer portal, and they haven't had to. Now, I'm not saying they don't bring in guys, because they absolutely are going to bring in guys, but they haven't brought in a ton to be that. Georgia's kind of the same way. Georgia's going to bring in guys. They recruit at the highest level, and they'll bring in some guys from here or there. Heck, their starting running back was a guy, but they're not bringing in 20 guys from the transfer portal, 25 guys, and flipping a roster there. But you mentioned it earlier. Indiana. Think about Indiana. Do you think the people at Indiana think that the transfer portal stinks? Indiana has been a doormat for every year except for maybe 3 years since I've been watching football. They just haven't been any good. It's a basketball school. And yeah, they had a stadium. They're in the Big Ten, but they just weren't any good. They were terrible. You hire a new coach, you bring in a slew of new players. All of a sudden, you're 11-1 at Indiana, and you're in the college football playoff. Now, some might say, well, they didn't play anybody. That's a different conversation for a different day. They're there, and they use the transfer portal to their advantage. I'm going to ask this again, Fitz. How is that bad for college football?
It's not. What could be bad for college football is the belief is it's easy, because it's not.
There you go.
I would be just like coaches go visit other programs in the offseason to learn about offense or defense or special teams. I would be sending coaches out to Indiana and to Colorado if you can, to find out, what are you doing in the portal? What is making this work for you more consistently than other schools? And I think there's probably a level of preparation there for when the portal opens that we're not appreciating.
Right.
They're not reacting to guys going into the portal. They've already reacted to the rumors of them going into the portal, the potential of them going in the portal, and scouted them. So on day one, they know fit, not fit. And they can make an offer right then. Because one of the things we found out from the portal is if you showed the love quickly and early, you got a better chance. And so now that means everyone's just going to give out offers.
Right.
And without really being prepared to know, is this kid a good fit? And then they might back off those offers. But sometimes they don't, and they take a chance on a kid they just shouldn't do it with. And meanwhile, the more successful coaches with the portal are like, not quite what we want in the locker room. Physically gifted, nah, we're going to find someone else. And I think there's almost an NFL level of roster management there or higher that needs to be taking place, and you better have the right guy in charge of it for your program.
I was just going to say that. It goes back to having somebody, or maybe even a team of people, probably 2 or 3, which I got to believe that job is more than a one-person job. That you can't, there's many people that get in the portal. It's just like recruiting. You don't, one person isn't doing all the recruiting for you. One person can't manage the transfer portal. It's impossible, Fitz. It's impossible. So it goes back to who's going to invest in doing that, which again is more money. I understand, but when has it not ever been about money? You know, people, that's another thing that people say is that, you know, the money involved and, you know, it's ruining it. It's all about money. And I always go back to college football has never been non-for-profit. Not one day has college football been a non-for-profit entity. Never, ever, ever. Because if it was, you think they would build the stadiums that they build? They'd sell the parking and the merchandise and all of that stuff? Of course not. If it was non-for-profit, they literally wouldn't care. But since it is for profit, they can sell out these stadiums. They can sell the parking, the concessions, the merchandising. It's always been about money, people. It's never not been. And you can say that the money's so much bigger. Well, so are salaries. So is everything all over the world. Everything is bigger than what it was 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. It's just a way of the world. And I think the quicker that people look, I know we don't like change, but the quicker you get on board with change that you can't affect, the better off you could be. Now, that's kind of a life thing. More than a college football thing.
Trust
and
me,
I
I
don't want to be Big B the preacher talking about that. I'm just saying the quicker you can just deal with change that you can't control, the better off your life will be, man. Now, you can control what you can control and not what you can't. And you can't control what's going on in college football, so you might as well get along with it because you're not going to stop watching. You know, all the people that say, I'm not going to watch anymore. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. You watch, you root. You may not like it, but you watch and you root because we're invested. We love it. We love college football, man. And we're not going to agree on everything that goes on. We never have. Guess what? Imagine that. We've never agreed, Fitz, on everything that goes on within college football. But we're still going to watch. We're still going to root because when the balls got kicked off this year, nobody cared about the transfer portal. Nobody cared about NIL. The only thing they cared about is their team winning. I said it. I say that all the time. People probably get tired of me, but I'm going to continue to say it. It's the truth. Nobody cared, Fitz. You just wanted your team to win. You hope that you did enough NIL and transfer portal stuff to help your team win. That's it. And that's where I kind of want to end this thing is that it's here. It's a part of it. I'm one of those. I don't feel bad for coaches because coaches get compensated a ton to deal with it. It may not be what they signed up for, but if it isn't, nobody's holding a gun to your head saying you got to take the money and keep the job. You can always quit, and they don't quit. So if it's not what you want, I totally understand. I'm not even mad at you if you don't want to be a part of it, but then don't be a part of it. But if you're going to be a part of it, stop complaining. Put together some stuff that might make some better changes to it, but stop complaining, saying it doesn't work, deal with it, and move on from there, Fitz. That's kind of my feeling on it. It's here. We can't change it. Can we tweak it? Yes, but it isn't going away. I don't think it should go away. And the teams that use it properly are the teams that have been successful.
Well, you're very familiar with pro football. I think we're going to move into an era of college football in which there is a coaching staff. Duh. You got the head coach and your position coaches and all the other analysts that are focused on your team. And I think every major program also is going to have an office of roster management that will include people that evaluate the portal, keep an eye on the portal, people that do high school recruiting, keep an eye on high school recruiting or junior college recruiting, and some talent analysts, just like we see at the professional level, Big B, that aren't only scouting for future players, draft picks / signees. You're scouting other rosters.
Absolutely.
You are constantly scouting other rosters to evaluate, well, this guy might be moving in to free agency. This guy might be moving into the portal, depending on what level you're at. Are we interested in him? Let's evaluate him right now, just in case.
Right.
And I think to win the portal in the future, you're going to have that level of commitment where you're not like, okay, he's in the portal, let's look at him. Brother, you're too late.
You're too late. That's exactly right.
And you might get him if he doesn't get other offers, but he better fit you specifically if that happens.
Correct.
Because that can happen. Don't get me wrong. Cam Scadaboo might have not worked at any other program except under Kenny Dillingham. You don't know for sure. I think he would have, but something might have clicked. So maybe you're smarter than everyone else, but do you want to test that theory? I know I wouldn't because, well, we know why I wouldn't.
Well, and guys' jobs are on the line too if you want to test that theory. You can do that if you want to, but don't be mad if you miss on a bunch of guys and then your season goes in the tank. And another thing is, and again, we'll end it on this. I didn't want to go on a rant, is people are always complaining about there's not enough money. If schools want to make available a certain dollar amount that you got to pay a staff to go and handle this, the schools can make available a certain dollar amount to get a staff to deal with this. Don't tell me that there's not enough. Well, there's not enough money. Yeah, there is. You can make the room because guess what? Every dollar that a university makes, do you think it's all just it's tied up in everything? They make no profit? Come on. So yes, there's money if you want to make it available. You absolutely can. It's just a matter of, do you want to do that? And I know what some people will say. Well, the schools that have more money will invest in it, and will be able to do it, and the others won't. There's always haves and have-nots in life and in college athletics. There's always been a Texas, and there always has been a Boise State. Always. That hasn't changed. So I don't know why the big to do now is, well, the have-nots are going to have more. They've always had more money. I think part of it is people think that kids just now started getting paid. And I'm like, kids been getting paid since the 40s. It just wasn't legal. I go, now it's legal and kids are getting paid. I go, so the quicker you get that out of your mind, I think, Fitz, the better off you'll be. Kids have always been getting paid, man. People have been paying people under the table literally for decades. Now it's just legal. So, and there's always been haves and have-nots. So you can't do anything about it. Somebody's always going to have more money than you, man. It's just the way that, unless you're Elon Musk, that's just the way the world works. But that doesn't mean you still can't be successful at the highest level if you do it right, Fitz.
You got it.
So,
you got it.
Well, I appreciate everybody again, man. Thank you guys for joining us again. Continue to get in those comments. Let us know where you agree and disagree again today. We don't get me wrong. We're going to have a bowl edition. I was kind of waiting until Friday because we're going to go over it then. We'll be back again tomorrow, dive into some other topics. I appreciate everybody being in here. Thank you again. Remember, like, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. Until we see you tomorrow, you guys have a good one, man.
Thank you for watching the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. This has been a Spirit Street production.